Hey there, I've got a really fun project to do with you today. My name's Christine and I'm going to show you how to draw and paint this pretty toucan. Let's jump right into it. I've got drawing paper and a 4B pencil. You can use whatever you have for this part. Just want you to start off by drawing a pear-shaped, sort of tilting over to the side. And we've got this imaginary axis in it, and I want you to start right where that meets the top of the pear and draw a short line down right into the top of the pear. Now we're going to start drawing the face on the left side of that short line by drawing a large circle that encompasses the whole eye area, and then we're going to draw what I think of as a bib on this pear. It's actually the neck and breast area, the yellow part in your reference photos to the left, but it looks like a bib. Now draw a short line angled downward and out, and then a curved line all the way out to where the end of the bill comes to. Then we're going to put the line in for the top of the lower portion of the bill, and we're going to put a little lip on it, just a little sliver of the inside of the beak that's showing right there, but it's not a beak, it's a bill. And I don't like how mine got on there because my pencil lead's too thick, so I'm going to redraw it. But anyway, it's just that little sliver that you can see where you, in your reference photo, you can see just the tiniest bit of the inner portion of the lower half of the bill. Then we're going to draw the upper half of the bill, and I want you to notice there's a gap. If you'll look up where the number 1 is for reference photo number 1, where my thumb is, I'm showing you there's a gap there between the lower and upper bills. So draw a dot all the way out to the end where your bill is going to go to, and then draw a line out to it that is a really gentle curve and then kind of curves sharply downward out at the end and leaves a gap between the upper and lower bills. Then you draw the top of the bill the same way, just come off the top of that short line that we drew and go all the way out, gently curving until you get all the way to the end, and then it sharply curves downward. Now we're going to draw the line that puts in where you can sort of see up into that upper bill, like you're seeing the roof of its mouth, so sort of. Now we're going to draw a smaller circle inside the first circle that you drew. We'll add more detail to that later. Now I'm going to put a quick gestural little line to sort of maybe indicate a wing. And looking down now at reference photo number 2, let's put in the legs and feet. So draw what's kind of like 2 short little lines, like maybe a number 11 laying down on its side. And that's where that one leg is jutting out from the body of the bird. Then start putting in the claws or the toes, whatever you want to call them. Put in 2 or 3 of them, just kind of looking rounded like they're wrapped around that twig he's sitting on. And put in the indication of the upper part of the leg. Maybe it's, I don't know, the thigh part of the leg. I'm not sure what it's called. But put one in on the other side as well now. And on this other side, you don't see very much of the actual leg part. You just see, like, looking straight on at the claw where it's wrapped around the twig. And again, you want to put about 3 fingers or toes, whichever it is. I guess it kind of functions in the role of both hands and feet for a bird, but anyhow, whatever you're calling it, draw those in, about 3 of them, and then you just put in some easy lines for the twig that he's sitting on, and you can make that straight or crooked or whatever kind of way. I like it a little bit of bend in it and some crooks because it gives it more interest. So I'm going to just make mine shaped like this, and that's about all we need to draw. If we were going to be drawing on our watercolor paper, this is where we would stop at that point where you're going to add color. I am going to erase these couple little extra lines we don't need from where we drew our initial guide, which was a pear, so you erase those lines. And that's where you would stop and then pick up your paints or your colored pencils, or etc. And it's called a line drawing. There is no shading in it at all. You don't want to shade on your watercolor paper. When we get to that later, that'll be important. For now though, I'm going to go ahead, and I want you to go ahead and do this as well with your drawing on your drawing paper. Let's put in some dark lines here where there will be dark lines in the painting, and I'm going to go ahead and add in some detailed where there's dark coloring on the bill, and I'm going to shade that in. And we're going to go ahead and create a shaded actual drawing now out of this. We just started with the line drawing because that's what you'll need later to transfer to your watercolor paper. So I'm adding color, or I'm adding value in here, and that's going to become very important later on. Now I'm coloring in a little bit of dark feathers on the top of his head and down the back of the head and neck, and coloring in a lot of dark on the body here where it's all black because of the feathers of the bird. Well, the black feathers, those are feathers on the yellow area too, but you know what I mean. Anyway, just put my pencil over on the side and color that all in. And then in a second I'm going to pick up my blending stump and do some smoothing out of some of this stuff. I'm also going to smooth and then add in some more dark color, and that's very similar to what we do when we paint with the watercolor. We put some color in with the brush and we let it dry, and then we go back in and put some more color over top of that. Right now I'm just putting in the little indication of his tail that you can see the underneath side, a little bit of it back there behind that twig. And let's see, I'm going to color in the center part of the eye where it's the black part, but I am going to remember to leave a little highlight there, because part of what we're doing is working out the parts that we need to leave white. And I'm also going to color in this area of the face here, because when we go to painting, I'm going to paint that whole area in rather than just painting a ring around the eye, because it will actually look better to do it that way, and that'll make more sense when we get started painting. But for now, I'm just doing it like that. Now I'm smoothing out my pencil shading right in here, and that way I can end up going back in and putting some more dark color over the top of it. And also this blending stump is picking up graphite. If it gets too full, just rub some of it off on the corner of your page or on a different piece of paper or whatever. And that's also very similar to what we do when we paint. We are moving paint around on our paper with the paintbrush. Now, as you can see, I'm putting some darker color in here. That's adding interest and adding some of the dimension and shape that we see in our reference photo, and making that just look prettier. Lighten or smudge this out a little bit with my eraser here because I got it a little too dark. So now I'm smoothing this in with my blending stump. I'm smoothing it out, but I'm not smoothing it to one distinctly smooth equal consistency all over the whole thing. I'm not making it one homogeneous color. I want some of that variation to show, so it gives an indication of texture. And you can probably also see that I'm able to use the graphite that is on this blending stump. Like right here, I'm just going to color in these feet and legs with what's on there, and then I'm going to pick up my pencil and add a darker line underneath the leg and between the toes, and we will do exactly that same thing with our paintbrushes later when we're painting. This is how we'll give a distinct and pretty form and shape to this area of our painting. Do the same thing here on this twig. I'm putting dark color or dark pencil lead on the bottom edge only of that twig. Then with the blending stump, I smear that paint around a little bit, and with what's already on the blending stump also, I'm able to color that in and shade that really nice and make that look like a nice rounded twig that he's sitting on. I'm also going to add some darker color underneath the body of the bird, because his body is casting a shadow right there, so we'll want that area to be a little bit darker as well. Now that's about all we're going to do for this drawing, so you can put a frame on that, call it done. That is our pencil drawing also known as our value study. And we're going to shift gears a little bit here and start preparing to pick up our paints and paint. So we're going to need to get our watercolor paper ready to go. Now I've got my sheet all taped down to my board here. You might prefer to actually do the sunny window method of transferring your line drawing to your watercolor paper first before you tape it down. I do have how to do that in a different one of my videos, so you can look for that if you don't know what I'm talking about. But I'm going to just quickly draw the toucan again, and I'll go through those steps quickly again for you, and you can do the same if you want. Just draw right on your paper. So we start out with drawing the pear shape, and then we make the little short straight line down at the back of the bill. Then we draw the short line angling out and downward in a curved line, and in the top of the lower part of the bill and the little lip. Then we put a target dot for where we're drawing the upper bill, the lower edge first, and then the upper edge. And then we start the face and we draw the circle for the eye area, and I'm going to go ahead and put in the other circle inside there. Now I'm tweaking the shape of my pear a little bit here, making the bird body a tiny bit thinner. And then I'm going to put a bib on him for the yellow neck and breast area. Then let's put the line that indicates the roof of the mouth, of the upper mouth area or beak area, and start on the legs and get the legs and feet drawn in there. 3 toes on that side and 3 on that side. Then put the twig that he's sitting on. I forgot to mention that I'm actually looking at a mirror image of the reference photo from what I showed you guys, because I wanted it to look like the one I showed you, and my reference photo was backwards, so I just translated that in my head, but I went ahead and put a digital copy of it on for you to see it the right way, so it wasn't too hard for you, hopefully. So there's our drawing, and we're ready to go with painting. Now you want to keep your pencil drawing handy, because that's your value study, and you've got a lot of information in there that's going to be very helpful to you when we get started painting here. It's going to show you where to leave light, where to add dark color, where to add some your really darkest values, your lightest values, etc. And I want to tell you also, the more times you draw and practice your subject, I do that all the time. I just sit and play with it, drawing it, because I feel like the more familiar I am with my actual subject, the more valuable information I have right here on this page in all of these value studies, which are just pencil drawings, but they serve the purpose of a value study, and they help me become more familiar with the subject, so I don't have to stop and worry about how big is the beak, what's the shape of it right there, where's this foot go. If I don't have to think about those things, I get to focus on my painting technique, and it frees me up a little bit for that. So now, if you've got your drawing onto your watercolor paper and your paper's taped down onto your board, we're about ready to pick up our brushes and start putting water on the paper. And the first thing we want to do is put water everywhere that there's going to be our lightest color, namely yellow. And I'm going to just go ahead and smear this water all over that whole beak, because I will be able to paint the dark color over top of the lighter yellow. That's why we start with the lightest colors first, because you cannot paint light over top of dark colors in watercolor. So keep that in mind. And we're going to go ahead and put water everywhere we've got our light color, which is yellow. And that's not always meaning light like yellow versus blue. Those are hues. I'm really talking values right there, more important. But in this case, it is a hue too. So water everywhere on the face and neck and yellow breast area, yellow all over that bill. And I just went ahead and got it in the eye area and the whole beak and the upper the roof, inside part of the upper beak, because it isn't going to hurt anything at all if yellow paint gets there. Now, I'm going to start out with some light, almost a lemon yellow, and I'm going to run the names of the colors I'm actually using across the bottom of your screen in case you want to know that information. However, you may use whatever colors you have. This is just a cool yellow color, and it's a light lemony type of a yellow, if that helps you. And I'll refer to it as that rather than saying the name, because I don't want you to get hung up on using exactly the same name paint that I've got. That isn't really important. But that information is there for you if you want it. So you can see I'm just putting the yellow paint all over the bill, all over the breast area, put it in the face area, and having that water on there helps the color to just go on nice and smooth. Now I've picked up a little bit of a warm orangey red color. Mine is called Scarlet Lake, which you will have seen on your screen, but I'm just dropping that orangey red color right into the yellow, right along the edge there where the dark color begins on the beak, because that's going to bleed up into that yellow just a little bit and look real pretty. Now I picked up a kind of a purpley red color, and I'm putting that in the roof area of the beak, and then I'm going to put it on this area of the beak that's going to be dark. And actually I think my yellow was still a little too wet, so I'm going to have to clean that up a little with a clean brush that I dried on my paper towel. Just scoop up the paint that ran up there that I didn't want. And now I can just actually dab on a little bit more yellow and fix that. And I'm going to use a clean brush again to clean up a little bit on the top edge there. And go back to painting my purpley red color on the lower portion of the bill. I will go ahead and take this opportunity to remind you, your eraser in watercolor is a clean, damp brush that you just tickle off color that you don't want on there. So if color that got where it wasn't supposed to be, just tickle it back off there with a clean, damp brush. Now I'm putting a little bit of an orangey or mostly yellow color in that little lip sliver of a lip area that's the inside portion of the lower bill that we can see, because I think that'll look good and it'll help delineate it and separate it from the bottom portion of the bill. Now I'm going to paint another layer of color on that bottom bill. I didn't use very much water, and it was already starting to dry and almost the whole way dry, so it's okay for me to go ahead and layer on this next layer of color. But you do need to be a little bit cautious when you're doing layering or glazing in watercolor, and always try to remember to make sure the first layer is dry before you put the next layer on. Now I've mixed some indigo and some perylene violet, and I'm adding a little bit of transparent red oxide to make a dark color that I'm going to start adding on to that upper bill. That's the basis of what will become my black color that I mix myself. But I don't have it mixed very dark right now. It's very diluted with kind of a lot of water, because I just want to get my initial layer on, initial layer of that color. I'm going to put a couple layers of that color and just darken as I go each layer. But I'm layering that right over top of where I had already put in yellow and Scarlet Lake and some stuff like that. I'm just layering colors on, and again, that is called glazing. And it's kind of important that the layers underneath are dry before you put the next layer, and that's, if you remember that, you'll have good success with doing this technique. So I'm just going darker and darker, and now I'm going to, while that is still wet, I'm going to pick up some indigo blue and just go straight from the indigo straight over onto my paper and touch that over into that upper edge of the dark area on the upper bill, and let that indigo paint blend together with the purpley color paint that's already on the paper there, and that'll blend together and have a nice soft edge and look really nice. Now I want to darken the lower portion of the bill a bit more with another layer of paint here. And just pick up some more of the purpley mix that I had going on, the darker purple mix. And then I just wet my brush, and I'm going to go back into that and try to get a soft edge going there. I think I'm going to add some more color. It needs to be good and dark here. Now I'm going to go ahead and add some water to the bottom where the main body of the bird is, and just get that all wet in there. Not drippy wet, but wet enough that there's a bit of a sheen on the paper. And then I'm going to pick up some of my Perylene Violet, a really pretty purpley red color, and just put a little bit of that right along the edge. It's okay if it goes up into the yellow just a little bit. And I'm going to put that right along the edge there, and I'll end up covering up a bunch of it, but for now you can see where the paper is wet. Sorry about that traffic noise. My husband says they're rushing to get my artwork. But anyway, I'm mixing up, whoa, I started to tell you where the edge of the paper is wet, the purpley red color is blending out and softening out into that. And that's exactly what we want to have happen. But I'm going to take my really dark color that I just mixed up here and go right over, almost over all of it, not quite all the way. And those colors will mix right there on my paper, and they'll make really pretty effects happen right there with the blending that happens naturally on its own. You don't want to use your paintbrush and try to stir it together any at all. Just lay the one color down kind of on top of the other color and let the water and the pigments in the paint do their magic together and create what you want to have happen there. This dark color, you may have been watching or may not have been watching, what I mixed was some more of the indigo and the Perylene Violet into the puddle I already had going there, just till I got it dark enough that I like it. I do not like black straight out of the tube. I think it is dull and lifeless, and I don't like it, so I always mix my own blacks. I think they have a lot more life to them, and you can kind of see some of the colors as they separate a little bit on your page, and they look much more pretty and vibrant. So I recommend you learn to mix your own blacks as well. Now I'm touching in color along the back of the head, and I put it on the little bit that shows on the top of his head there, and a couple of quick strokes right down in there they might dry and look a little tiny bit of an indication of a wing or something right there. And I'm going to go ahead and put some really dark, as dark as I can get it, right here on the upper half of the legs, which I think I told you I'm going to just call it the thigh. I don't know if that's what it is, but it seems like it ought to be. So color the thigh part of the legs using just the tip of your brush, and get some really dark color, meaning it's got less water in it. It's less diluted, so it's stronger paint, darker color. Now I'm going to just, I think I'll give my brush a good dunk and then wipe the excess off on my palette and touch it to the paper towel, and then with the diluted stuff, the same color but very diluted, I'm going to use the tip of my brush and that paint that's remaining on there to put in the indication of that tail, the part of it that we can just see back there behind the twig. And again, it is the underneath side of his tail. We see some very light gray muted color back there, and you can touch in a little bit of the undiluted color while it's still good and wet there, and let it kind of spread out and just give the least little bit of the darker undiluted color in there will dry perfectly. Now we need to add a bit of color. You can see the underneath of his tail is reddish looking, so I'm going to start out with some of my purpley red color that's pretty diluted. Oh my goodness, the traffic is bad today, I'm sorry. I'm going to put some reddish purple under there, and then I'm going to go ahead and touch a little, as soon as I finish this, I'm going to touch a little bit down on the underneath part, the part underneath the twig, but not very much because there isn't really very much color showing there. And then I'm going to pick up some Scarlet Lake without a whole lot of water and touch that in, and again, don't have too much on your brush, except I guess I might need a little bit more than this. Touch that Scarlet Lake in there, and I'm going to pick up a strong bit of it and touch it right there. That's just perfect. That is going to dry perfect. And the colors will mingle together and soften out their edges and blend together perfectly. Now I'm going to scoop up some gamboge color. Sometimes it's called new gamboge. There might be a difference, but if there is, I'm not really sure what it is, and I pretty much use them interchangeably. But I think I need more than that. It's not showing up. Gamboge is a warm yellow, whereas the other yellow I used was a cool yellow. But I'm going to just put a fairly strong bit of that right down this outer edge of the bird's breast, and coloring a little bit of the face, and I'm just kind of wiping the paint off my brush onto the paper here. That would be the best definition I know of the stroke that I'm using. Then I've got a little bit more color here, throw that on there, so I've got a good bit going there. Then dry the brush good and just very lightly drag it right down that edge, just to kind of knock that edge down a little so you don't have that hard edge or that very distinct line. Just lightly do that. And now I'm going to take some of my lemon yellow and mix it with some phthalo green and make up a really pretty bright neon green, and we're going to attack that eye area. So just keep mixing till you get a light lime green color you like. I think I'm going to throw in some of this cobalt turquoise because it's such a pretty color. It's a very Florida color. And I think that will do something very nice for this color here that I've got. Now, with the paint not being real drippy on the brush, but plenty on there, I'm going to paint the circle around the eye, and then I'm going to add more water, tamp it off a little bit, and then just paint out that whole area of the face around the eye with the slightly diluted version, and then take more of the not diluted light green and put it back in around the eye, around that circle again. And because it's still all damp up in that area, that will just kind of melt out into the other paint that's there, into the face area, and dry just perfectly. That's going to look beautiful when that's done. We're not finished with it, but take my word for it, that is going to be perfect. So now let's see, let's do a little touch up right here. Remember, I told you clean water, mostly dried off of your brush, so you have a clean damp brush, is your watercolor eraser, and you just lift or tickle up little bits of paint where you don't want them, and remove it from the paper, wipe it off in the paper towel, rinse your brush again, go again like that till you're happy. Now I'm going to add some more red into this roof of the mouth type of an area. It needs to be considerably darker than we have it right now. So I'm going to darken up my puddle of purpley red and put some more of that in there, in that little area. I'm going to add some more of my magenta color. It's the more red of the colors that I have out here on the palette today. And I reddened that really up, and I darkened the value of it considerably, and it looks better now, although you still have the distinction of it because it's a different color. I think if you took a photocopy of that, it would all kind of look homogeneous, like one gray color, because its value is so very similar. Now I'm putting some more dark around the edge here because I think that needs to be darkened up. I think actually the whole lower bill needs to be darkened up. So let me just work on that for a minute. And I'm using just the tip ends of my angle brush. This flat angle brush is very useful for a lot of things, and I can use just the pointy tip, just those bristles or those hairs right at the tip there, and I can paint really thin lines of color, which is what I'm doing here now. I've got my brush damp, and I'm going to try to feather out this edge here, make a softer edge there, not such a hard distinct color. Oops, I didn't think it was dry enough for me to be doing that yet. Let me just add more color over the top of it, and significantly darken the whole thing, which looks better anyway, actually. So that's fine. I just put some dark color right over top of that, and that looks good. I like that. It will dry lighter than I've got it here. And so keep that in mind too when you put paint on your paper. If you think it's too dark, let it dry, because it will be lighter once it's dry. And you'll kind of learn that as you paint more and more. Do a little bit more housekeeping and clean up a little bit more right here. Now let's switch to the round brush. I've got a small round brush that I'm going to pick up a lot of indigo and fling it out here in this puddle I've already got going. And I'm going to mix up a really dark. I've added some more of my violet color and more indigo, and just back and forth. If you aren't getting quite what you want, you can throw in a little bit of phthalo green or a little bit of your transparent red oxide, or even some burnt sienna. Burnt sienna and ultramarine make a beautiful dark color, but we haven't been using ultramarine on this painting, so I'm not going to go that route for this, because I like the continuity of using only the colors that I have in the rest of the painting. So I've got mostly violet and indigo in here until I get it as dark as I can get it. More pigment, less water will get it a really good strong paint. And then I'm just going to kind of outline that inner circle there for the eye. When I was a kid and I was coloring, I always outlined my stuff first. And so I'm going to do that again here because it just seems like the thing to do. But I need to remember to leave a little white spot for the highlight. If you don't do that, your birdie will not look happy and alive and pretty. So leave a little highlight, a little gleam in his eye, because he's happy to be here. I've got too much paint, so I'm just pick up a little bit of that, suck that back up into the brush. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to put this line right down here. I'm not really sure. I should have researched it better, but I didn't. I don't know if this is feathers or if it's actually a black area on the hard material that comprises the bird's bill. But whatever it is, it looks like a nice little thin black line there. So I'm going to add that in while I've got the black on my brush. And that gap there, I don't know whether to connect the dots there or not. Let's connect it and see what happens. It's a little, I don't quite like, it's not bad, but I think I like it better. I'm going to just tamp it down with the damp brush, take some of that paint back up off of there and see if I like that better. So again, I'm just kind of lifting some of that paint back off of that area where the gap is between the upper and lower bills. So I'm going to have a little bit of an indication of a line there without having a distinct line. I like that better. Now I've just picked up a little tiny bit of my warm red color and I'm going to lay it out right on that part that I think looks like the tongue. I'm pretty sure that's what that is right there. I don't know. I'm telling myself that's what it is. So I'm painting it sort of pinkish or bright red, I don't know, whatever. Now I'm going to scoop up a little bit of this gamboge again here, and I'm going to just put in that line right on around the green ring around his eye. So I'm just defining that outline a little bit with this warm yellow color. And I'm going to lay a bit of that color down in the top area of the face up above the eye. But notice how distinct that shows up. Had I done that with black or brown or purple or something, that would have been really garish and just wouldn't look good at all. but doing that with this warm yellow color, it defines it just perfectly. Now I'm going to touch in some more of the undiluted bright green color that I had put on there initially. Just put that right inside in that ring area, and when that dries, that will look perfect. It'll be just a little shade brighter green than the green that's on the rest of the face area, and it looks very natural, and he won't look like he's got a googly eye pasted on him or something. Now I'm going to mix up a little of my cobalt turquoise with a little bit of cobalt blue. Mix those two together, and with that on my brush, I'm going to color in the whole leg and toes area on both leg and feet. Just color that whole area in like I did, if you remember, with the graphite on my blending stump. I just colored the whole foot area in all one color. I'm going to go do the other foot, let that one dry a second. So let me paint this other one with that same color, and again it is a light blue color. So if you've got two blues on your palette, use your lighter blue, or maybe a mixture of the lighter with a little bit of the darker blue mixed in, and just get a nice light blue. Then go back and touch into your dark blue, and in this case straight into the cobalt with nothing else added and no added water, just a strong bit of the cobalt paint, and put the dark line under the leg and the lines between the toes. And I'm starting to see that I did that too soon. My light blue paint was still a little too damp, and my darker cobalt color is blending into it too much. So what I'm going to do is clean off my paintbrush and get it dried on the paper towel, squeeze out a little of that excess water, and then just use it to kind of pick up some of that excess paint that has spread out where I don't want it. Just pick up a little, wipe it off on the paper towel, and pick up a little more. Now I'm going to pick up some of my first color and straight into the cobalt turquoise, my lighter blue, and just touch a little bit of that back in where I removed paint, and see if I can't get the distinction that I wanted between the light and dark blues. But that is how you create the form and the dimension and the shadow area on these feet, and how you would do that in an area like this without adding black or gray or anything like that into your paint to make a shadow, because that will make it muddy and not very pretty to gray it down like that. This way you've got the form defined, but your paint color stays vibrant and bright and pretty and clean. Now I'm going to mix a little of my transparent red oxide. You can use burnt sienna if you have that, or just some warm brown color. I'm going to mix that into this green puddle, what I had left of my light green puddle, and I'm going to make a yellowy brown color that I'm going to use to color the twig that he's sitting on, and I'm going to put this light color along the top edge of that twig. And after I get the whole twig painted across there, most of the way across, just on the top edge, and it's not super wet, but it is still damp, damp paint all across there. And once I get this on, then I'm going to add some dark color into that puddle and darken it and make a darker brown. So I'm going to scoop up some of this puddle that I have here and actually just go straight over to the twig and wipe that off onto the bottom edge of the twig. Everything's still a little bit too wet, so I'm not getting the distinct difference in color that I would like. But you can begin to see putting that dark on the bottom edge there creates some shape. It also, with this brush stroke, side to side like this with the edge of the bristles of my flat angled brush, gives me the appearance of bark on this twig. And so I've got some texture going, and I've got some shadow going on the edge there, and is trying to work on this dark area where the cast shadow is. just going to add some more color here to get a nice dark color going, and I'm not being careful to keep the colors the same all the way across, because you get more interest when you've got some variation to your color. So it's okay that I'm going back into first one color and then another on my light tannish brown color versus adding more of the warm brown to make it a slightly different color over here on this end. And then I'm going to add some more of the dark in there. Still much too wet. My dark isn't really showing up because it's just too wet. So I'm going to go straight in the indigo with a mostly dry brush. There, that shows up better. So I've got that cast shadow area in there much better. Now let's see if I can touch some darker color along here to darken this bottom edge. And this needs to be darker over here. So let me go get some more indigo, darken that up. I think I'm probably getting too fiddly with this. Probably be better if I just quit, leave it alone. But of course I don't want to do that. But I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to just rinse that brush out pretty good and move on. Now I'm going to get an eraser and show you quick here what I was telling you about not drawing your lines too dark. You can see my pencil line on the top of this beak really strongly. I don't always like to have such dark lines, but look what happens. I've got paint over the top of that line and even just water, and using this eraser and pushing pretty hard, I'm not really able to erase much, if any, of that line. It's because the water got over and it kind of sets it in place. So anytime you put a dark line in, just know that that's probably going to become part of your artwork. So when you draw, your drawing and your line drawing initially on your watercolor paper, try to use the lightest lines that you can so that you don't have pencil lines showing, unless you want pencil lines to become part of the piece. In that case, dark away. Now let's get a larger flat brush. I think it's another flat angled brush, but this one is a full inch, possibly even 1.25 inches. And I put it in the water, and I'm putting clean, clear water all over the background behind this bird. And I'm going to start putting a background on him just by picking up some of these different colors I have left over on my paint palette, colors that we used in the painting. They're the perfect thing to make the background, because again, we're going to have some continuity going on. But I'm going to just scoop up paint and different mixes and different shades of green and brown and yellow, and just throw out here some kind of leafy looking shapes. And I don't even have a plan at this point. I'm just kind of throwing stuff out there. And that's fine, because we're actually painting the underlayer or the first layer of our background, and we want it to be really softly diffused and everything. And my paint colors can run together and blend. And by the way, the toucan lives in a subtropical area, so that would be a forest. He eats berries and fruit, and so we want to paint some foresty looking stuff or subtropical stuff here. I probably shouldn't have put that thing that looks a lot like a banana leaf, but maybe I can fudge that it's a a fern or something. But there would be ferns where he lives, so you can put ferny looking things on there. But right now we're mostly just trying to get some vague color in there. And you also want to leave a bit of bright colored or light colored areas where it might look like the sunlight is peeking through between the leaves and stuff. So we might have a little bit of a dappled light appearance that we're going for. So don't paint everything solid. Don't put it all one solid color unless that's really what you want. If that's the look you're going for, then fine, go ahead. It's your artwork and you make it how you want it. But I'm just telling you a little bit of how I like it, and that is I use the different colors all over my palette where I was mixing up stuff for the painting itself, and just throw in some color, and I keep it very loose and light for this layer. And I do leave some really light areas, and I don't try to paint right all the way up to the edge of the bird all over the place. I get it close enough, and just throw a little bit of something light and then something not quite so light, and a couple of indications of fern or palm frond or flower stem or leaves or something. I just put stuff in there that can look like it might be something that would be in the area where this bird lives. But also I'm creating a world for him to live in, and I can create it to be whatever I want it to be. Now I'm going to put some of this indigo in here and make a darker color. It's still quite diluted from what we did before with painting the eyes and the beak and stuff, but it's darker than some of this other stuff that I had on there. And I'm going to just wipe some off on top of that other color, and then here I'm going to put in some lines, and those can maybe indicate fern or palm frond type of stuff. And because I put them on an area where the paper was still really wet, they're going to lay down, they're just going to sit right down into that paint and paper there and get really soft and diffused and pretty and look very, very much like they're the distant background, especially when we do the next layer and put more stuff over top of it. Let's see, I'm going to add a little bit of this color because I like it, and I might make some area that looks like maybe it's sky showing up back there. Let's see. It still looks pretty green, but that's okay. Let's run a little bit right along here. Dab a little bit on inside of that mouth area, just so it's not a big white area right in there. I don't want any area to look like it got forgotten, but actually I'm going to need to stop pretty soon because I don't want to get it too much on there. It won't look good when I go to put the final layer on. So I think this will just about do it. Now it needs to dry, and it's important that you let it dry completely before you move on to paint the final layer on. Mine is, we're going to call it dry now, and I'm going to go back in with some of the same colors, only less water, so it's darker, stronger pigment, and it'll put more detailed looking stuff. And I'm going to just fling in some viney looking stuff, some curly-Q stuff, some twigs, some flowers and some berries, and maybe some ferns, all kinds of stuff until I get it looking like I'm happy with it. And then when I feel like I've created a beautiful world for my toucan to live in, then I'm finished. I hope you had fun with this project today. excuse me, if you enjoy drawing and painting with me, please click that thumbs up and give me a like. And also don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell if you want to get notifications for more videos like this one, and get notified when I put up something new. Thank you again, and have a blessed day.